man woke up superhuman.
Hey internet, how's it going? So yeah, this is my first video in a review style about video games. I've tried it with movies, I've tried it with anime. Worked out for me a little bit, but yeah, now I think I want to try out something different in video games. And if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Jonathan. I make a whole bunch of videos about video games, anime, and a lot of things that I like. If you do like this video, please hit the like button, share, you know, all the usual stuff, and please follow me in these other places. All right. So yeah, without further ado, let's jump into this video because I have a lot to say about Resident Evil 3. Just sit tight, and we're gonna get right into this thing. If there's one thing that I will give Capcom, it's the fact that when it comes to making remakes, they are at the top of the game, especially since that when you kind of go all the way back to like the 2000s when they first made Resident Evil Remake, and then kind of topping it even above that when they made the HD collection for that, and then not only doing that but coming out with Resident Evil 2 Remake and now Resident Evil 3 Remake, which has to be commended and also appreciated. However, in that same breath though, as these remakes have been coming out year after year, there's something that they've been missing out on as these games go out. So what am I talking about, right? Well, now Resident Evil 3 Remake has come out and it has been receiving a lot of flack on the internet. Some of those things have either been calling it too short or they've been talking about NIMI and all that crazy stuff. And I'm just here to just give you my take on it. A Resident Evil fan who just wants everybody to like this game. And with my words, Capcom can kind of understand where they fell short in the end. So last year we got Resident Evil 2, and without a doubt that was literally one of my favorite games of 2019. And then I hear that Resident Evil 3 Remake was supposed to be dropping in 2020, almost about 15 months after Resident Evil 2 had. Instantaneously, I was actually happy, excited, and also curious as to what they were going to do with the game. And then all of a sudden, I hear that series veteran Kiyohiko Sakata is going to be leading a team like that actually works on this game, because it's not the same team that worked on 2. However, we have the man that programmed the 3 previous games and also 4 on it. Color me sold on the entire project. With the whole thing of me saying that, when you look at what they paired the game up with, in this case it was Project Resistance, the most I can say about that game is that it follows the same formula as Evolved, Friday the 13th, Dead by Daylight. It's the same formula, whereas that you have a group of survivors who are going up against a mastermind or a killer, and your goal is either to kill them or run away from the area. Honestly, the service, it does lend itself well to the Resident Evil formula. You play the same as what you do as when you were playing Leon, Claire, or in this case Jill, where that the characters in question, you also have melee weapons, and I believe every character kind of has their own like little buff or something. It's not like that they get the dodge or whatever, but every character does have their own little ability that gives them an edge when you pick them. So that's a good thing. The real turning point is the fact that the mastermind, or the set of masterminds in which that you can pick, is actually pretty fun. Whereas that they have their own little cards, you can set those down, you can set traps and everything. Also on top of that, if you really wanted to, that there's a super monster that's special for each and every mastermind. The only real drawback of this is that this game, for what it was, I could have seen this just being like its own little separate thing. Like they probably shouldn't have tried to pair it with Resident Evil 3 Remake. Because the funny thing is that this game is actually really fun for what it is, right? For it to be a co-op game where you can pick one of these 6 characters in a 4-man team, and depending on which 4 characters you bring along, it can actually help or hurt the match depending on which skills you have unlocked, which skills you don't have unlocked, and also which mastermind you are going up against. So on one hand, this is a very good setup for a good co-op game. The problem with it is the fact that with the level design, it is just a 3-act structure where like that you are running into an area, you're collecting an item, you're collecting some type of key card to kind of get further into this area, and then you destroy some type of item and then you leave out of the area. The gameplay is really fun. If they took this and they put this into a Resident Evil Outbreak, where you did have that puzzle-like structure again, but now every character has their own little ability, they have their own skills, and you can either get boards or get a nail and sort of close off doors and everything. That I can see that adding way more to the original Resident Evil Outbreak formula, especially since that Resident Evil Outbreak was one of the more fun Resident Evil co-op games to come out. Again, I have to say this is not a bad game. Resident Evil Resistance, the biggest fault of it is the fact that they're very short levels and some of the objectives are pretty to the point. Hopefully they do fix this over time. Well, at the very least, the beta in which that we're looking at this now, or at least like the skeleton in which we're looking at now, it looks really nice. And I would recommend this game if it was sold separately, but sadly it's not, and the only way to play it is that you have to have the main game of Resident Evil 3 Remake in order to play it, so take that what you will. Speaking of the main game, let me jump right into that by talking about some of the pros first, and then kind of grounding this out with some of the cons, the things that I believe that this game didn't necessarily do right, but would have helped it if they ever decide to put DLC in this game. If there's one thing that I can really praise this game on, it is its dialogue. Looking at the characters interact with one another, seeing how that Jill talking and cursing out Nemesis, at first it seems kind of, wait, she doesn't do that, but then it seems to be that's much more of a natural thing for somebody to, when they encounter a very scary monster that can jump up buildings and whatnot and punch through walls, yeah, that seems a bit normal. I mean, we see this in Brad, we see it in Tyrell, Mikhail, even Nikolai, which again, on a higher note, Jill and Carlos, their interactions are actually one of the better moments in this game. So I really do like that. Sadly, most of the other side characters, Brad, Marvin, Mikhail, they really are kind of just relegated to what they originally were. In this case, the side characters who kind of are just there to serve their purpose because bad things have to happen like in this game, so is what it is, right? The good thing is that they did give Tyrell a little bit more love, so he's not relegated to walking into an office and getting blown up, so at least there's that, right? Something that I do really like. Another thing that I really like in this game, how Nemesis feels early on in the game. He feels like a much more intimidating Mr. X, walking through doors and buildings, or even if you do try and find a safe spot, he would just sit there and just wait for you to come out. That kind of thing. I really like his chase potential. Whenever you think that you're getting away from him, he just appears somewhere in front of you. Like he jumps from a high building, or just Spider-Man's his way in to kind of cut you off and say, you're not going nowhere. I really like that in the early game because Nemesis is a bit more intimidating than Mr. X. However, there is something that is holding him back that really doesn't help him much in the late game. Speaking of that, we do have the gameplay itself, right? And yeah, it is the same as Resident Evil 2, but somewhat a bit more fun. Not necessarily because like the controls are better or like aiming, it is a bit faster. This game really emphasizes the difference between a STARS officer taking like a half a second to line her shots up a little bit better than a regular civilian or, you know, a rookie cop. Kind of makes you wonder, how will Chris be shooting then? Because if it takes Jill a half a second for her reticle to get up there, if Chris was the best marksman on the STARS team, then that does raise questions how small or how quick that reticle will come in. The dodge roll on the flip side of that is actually really fun, really nice, and technically if you can master it, even though it's a little bit easier to kind of perform here than what it was in the original game, it can actually make you OP. However, don't get a little bit too cocky though, because sometimes you can dodge into certain attacks. That's probably the only few good things that I can say about this game, you know, because again, when you beat the game, and I do like the fact that there are other modes, right? Like beyond the Nightmare mode, there's now a Inferno mode, and when you do beat the game, there is a shop. In order for you to get items, you can take the points you've earned like in the game, you can purchase your infinite rocket launcher, your infinite assault rifle, that kind of thing, which is actually really nice, which is a big callback to the first game. However, in that same breath though, like some of these items, you kind of wish some items to just have infinite ammo, but it's still nice though. It's still nice. Okay, so without a doubt, the number one thing that I really believe is holding Resident Evil 3 Remake back is the fact that the team working on this were really trying to rush this game out, or at the very least it felt as though is that they didn't put a lot of emphasis on the areas to kind of make this game feel claustrophobic, or even make Raccoon City feel big and somewhat full-on destroyed, because most of the time in which that we do spend in this game, it's on a city block, a power plant, then we kind of circle around that area for like a little bit, even when right up until we get blown from that area and then take the train and then leave it. That's about it. Because the original Resident Evil 3, right, there was a method to the whole reason why Nemesis wasn't chasing after Jill first. It was mostly because of the fact that the game was supposed to have a very slow build and then unleash him on you when you see how dangerous he is. Whereas that in this game, they kind of play their hand early. The first thing that you encounter whenever you play this game is Nemesis. And because you encounter Nemesis early, after a while, he kind of loses some of the intimidating factor that worked for Mr. X so well. The reason why Mr. X was such a very intimidating and even scary figure, it was mostly because of the fact that Mr. X was in a very claustrophobic area, and you really couldn't necessarily pick up where he was coming from aside from hearing his footsteps. And then if he found you, then well, now he's just gonna be on you. Whereas that Nemesis kind of loses a little bit of that atmosphere and luster, mostly because of the fact that in the original game, Nemesis's big like scary feature of him was the fact that he was very scripted to come out in very specific areas. In the first game, with Jill going to the police station to meet up with Brad and head into the STARS office to collect some very powerful weaponry, and then getting a message from Carlos and the UBCS and then meeting up that way. This is something a little bit bigger than gotta cut the tram on. Even going so far as to say that they have another helicopter. That's why they're going to the clock tower to radio in so they can get another helicopter. All that stuff is gone in this game. Most of the puzzles are gone. Most of the major areas, the clock tower, the city hall pass through, even the gas station is gone in this. Most of the major areas in which that you had to solve puzzles to get items to start up the tram, most of those are gone and kind of hidden behind this thing of just cut the power on, pick a route, then run from Nemesis for about 30 minutes if you're really good at it. Now, I'm not saying that them changing the way that they did it now is bad. I'm saying that with them doing what they did, you can see a noticeable difference in length and quality of the game, especially since that most of the atmosphere now is me just relegated to a very wide city block, running from a giant toy head, or you got Jill comically getting hit with 30 rockets and whatnot and getting flown over barriers. I was surprised to not hear like a Wilhelm scream. That kind of thing, it really does take something away from the game. The fact that I know why they did it is so that they could get this game out, because they didn't want to put a lot of time on it, because Capcom has a lot of projects in which that they wanted to work on. But then again, this is virtually the same problem that Resident Evil 2 Remake got a lot of heat for, which was the police station was their main focus. Everything outside of the police station was relegated to, well, now you see it, you play it for like a little bit, then we move on. Resident Evil 3 Remake, the fact that they didn't put a lot of time to add in the puzzles or change up some of the areas so that they do feel tight, the fact that you didn't have to get a lighter to burn away rope on some doors, or the fact that some areas spiraled around other ones and whatnot, or like that you can't cut through another area to get there, because some areas, once you run through them once, you could never go back to them again because they're very scripted. Like I said earlier, that they're very short. And honestly, a lot of people, rightfully so, have called this game out for not including the clock tower area. So that is a problem. Another big no-no that this game did, and this is another biggie, is the fact that the game itself really didn't have different scenarios. Forget the fact that they didn't put in the Gravedigger boss, but at the very least, the fact that you don't have a choice to either fight Nemesis in some areas and lead him away, or the fact that you can fight him and then you gain super items from him, even though technically you still can. You just don't have that choice anymore, which I feel kind of hurts the game on replayability. Would have been nice if they would have had it, but what can I say, right? You know what I mean? The game still is fun for what it is, though. And this isn't even talking about them like not like not putting in the mercenaries mode or taking the alternate routes. If this is anything like Resident Evil 2 Remake, and believe me it is, no matter which scenario you pick, the only thing that really matters is a note you find and who fights the final boss. Like, that's about it, because once you reach a certain point, scenario B just morphs into scenario A. So Capcom, if they really need to go back and work on Resident Evil 2 Remake and 3 Remake to alleviate that, make these games more than what they are, the chances of that happening are pretty slim. So yeah, I'm gonna leave this review here just saying that I really like this game for what it is. It's not terrible, it's not bad, Resistance is good, but if they would have put a lot more time into this and they would have made some of the other scenarios or some of the areas, it would have added so much to this game and it would have been one of the best Resident Evil games to come out. Sadly, they had to kind of shorten up some areas, namely the sewer, namely the clock tower area, and also change Nemesis from being a very intimidating guy to a Dark Souls monster. That's kind of where I'm going to leave that here. Please tell me what do you think about this in the comment section. If you like this video, please rate, comment, subscribe, share this video somewhere, and on top of that, you know, blah blah blah, click that bell. Thanks for watching. I'm out.